are not going to be allowing anyone with sex offenders. So we'll be looking at people in the sex offender registry. Any sex offenders will not be permitted at the site. Because we've agreed with, really through talking to the neighborhood that we won't be serving sex offenders, that we're going to need to know who individuals are so that we can search through the registry.
Site preparation has begun to level, gravel the site. It is underway. The move of the site will start here in the next week or so and is planning to end in September.
We have, especially our site council, they're really hopeful. They've brought this up as we meet with them weekly, that they really are hoping to be great neighbors. They're talking about, hey, can we get vests so that we can go around the neighborhood and pick up garbage? And they're really concerned about being perceived as good neighbors there.
Will residents be asked to get involved in cleanup, gardening, etc.? I know you talked a bit that your site council was excited about that. What would that look like moving forward?
Our residents are actually very excited for some sort. Are we going to have a garden? What about some flowers? I was very impressed, actually. I didn't know that so many of them were interested in having a green thumb or already had one. So they are very excited.
Relevant, important, convenient. This is ONN.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. Just going to give folks a couple minutes to get in, their audio connected. Okay, looks like that participant number is slowing down, so I'm going to get started. My name is Darian Lightfoot Sheher. I'm the Housing Programs Manager at the City of Olympia. Tonight, we're joined by a great group of people who are here to answer all your questions. Just a bit of an agenda. We're going to cover a lot of info, so we have the question and answer option. So you can wait till the end, see if we answer any of your questions, and then feel free to put your questions in the Q&A. Some of us will be able to type out the answers to your questions. And if they need a longer response, we'll open it up and I can read the questions aloud to allow for more of a narrative response. So put your questions in the Q&A. If we don't get those answered, we're going to be sticking to that hour timeline. So if we're unable to get to your questions, we'll be sure to document those and give you an emailed response. So be sure to add your email if you're looking for a longer response. So great. Thanks for being here this evening. Let's get started. So we're here to talk about Quince Street Village, which is formerly known as the mitigation site. The mitigation site currently lives at Franklin and Olympia downtown, started as a sanctioned area for tent camping downtown for people experiencing homelessness. In April 2020, we contracted with Catholic Community Services to operate and manage the site. Over time, the site has evolved and developed. Tiny homes were created and established, plumbing, showers, increased community and social service provider support. And now we're looking to expand and make the site even more robust than it currently is. And that will require us moving to Quince Street. This currently has 80 tiny homes. And this will allow just for some more elbow space for residents, better supportive services, laundry, shower, and folks from Catholic Community Services will get more into those specifics. But that is the cause for the relocation of the mitigation site. And that's going to look hopefully very similar to its current plan of being at the site for 3 years, and then will become permanent supportive housing after those 3 years. So just to remind folks on where this site is, 1.6 acre parcel. This is more specifically what it looks like. And then here is the layout of what the site will be. And we can come back to this slide if there are site specific questions. But these rows right here will be the tiny homes. And then the units around, it's hard to say specifically because it's so small, but these will be case manager units for case management support, site management units, restrooms, laundry, showers, etc. The whole area will be fenced in. There is a single point of entrance right here, only one way in and out. Here will be for trash pickup. I know this is a quick visual. We went more specifically into our site specific meeting a few weeks ago, but just to highlight that again. So the timeline, site preparation has begun to level, gravel the site. It is underway. The move of the site will start here in the next week or so and is planning to end in September. Tiny homes need moved, laundry, offices, etc. will hopefully end in September, and residents will begin to occupy the site come July or August. And so CCS will be operating both sites just for a temporary time until folks are fully able to transition in the August-September timeframe. So now I'm going to hand it over to Gabe from Catholic Community Services to talk more about site operations.
Thanks, Darian. Yeah, my name is Gabe. I'm a program director with Catholic Community Services, and Candace is also here. She's our site supervisor specific to this program. And so the two of us will be trading off on the next few slides to give some information. We want to start out by just sharing why at CCS we want to be a part of this program. And for us, it comes down to sort of this statement here from our mission statement, which is our employees and volunteers come from many faith traditions to serve and support poor and vulnerable people through the provision of quality integrated services and housing. Our focus is on those individuals, children, families, and communities struggling with poverty and the effects of intolerance and racism. We actively join with others to work for justice. And so for us, when we became involved with this site, we see that there's a lot of people struggling with poverty, trauma, and the kind of people that our mission calls us to serve. And so for us, the people that are in this program, the individuals that we've met are the individuals that our mission calls us to work with. And I'll pass the next slide over to Candace.
The site serves people who are experienced trauma and have health conditions and need support in order to find housing, employment, or overcome other barriers. And there is an individual who's living at the Olympia mitigation site just in Olympia in a tent and was in dire need of a shelter who moved to the mitigation site early last year. She was connected with on-site case management and received a referral for support that targeted medical barriers. She was signed up to get into housing. Struggles that plagued her while having low mobility and living in a tent were quickly resolved as she moved into a microhome at the mitigation site. Through constant support, hard work, and the services she was provided, she was able to get hip surgery to improve her mobility, obtain benefits from the state, and move into more permanent supportive housing, all within 9 months of her moving to the mitigation site. This was done through a collaboration from a lot of services that we provide on site, as well as working with external services. So it really helped improve this individual situation and then overcome some barriers that she needed in order to get into more permanent supportive housing. Our site operations include our security plan that CCS will provide staffing 24 hours per day, 7 days a week. All our staff are trained in Crisis Prevention Institute's nonviolent crisis intervention. We will have security cameras installed. We work very closely with the fire department and allow them to make recommendations about what they see as like maybe just improve on safety and so forth. We also work very close with the City of Olympia Fire Department on any safety concerns as well. We do not allow any visitors unless they were external service providers or internal service providers to come on site and work with individuals. We will have fenced with one secure entry point and no parking on site unless it's staff or the visiting service providers.
Thanks, Candace. And I think I think we said fire department twice, but we'll be working with this. The second point was that we'll be working with, continue to work with the police department. As far as neighborhood, we will be hosting quarterly neighborhood meetings. Some of our other programs do that as well, and that is a good touch point to connect in with the neighborhood that will be around. And we also, for our neighboring businesses, will have a general phone number that neighbors can call if there's any concerns related to participants that we are serving. Code of conduct. So each individual, in order to come into the site, has to agree and sign a participant code of conduct. Code of conduct is focused on health and safety of the site participants, the staff, and the neighborhood. And there are zero tolerance, major rule violations, and minor rule violations. And we are in some meetings with the neighborhood there. We are not going to be allowing anyone with sex offenders. So we'll be looking at people in the sex offender registry. Any sex offenders will not be permitted at the site. We also will reserve the right at CCS's sole discretion to deny services to any individual who we assess as a threat to the health, safety, or stability of the program participants, staff, or the immediate neighborhood. And that language will be in the code of conduct so that individuals know it's important to maintain health and safety in the site, but also in the immediate neighborhood. And an offsite supervisor from CCS holds weekly meetings at the site, and they work there to find solutions for issues that arise, review appeals, and things of that nature. That's also a place where sometimes we'll invite a neighbor to come discuss any issues they may have.
Some services we will provide within the program are going to be the community kitchen, the laundry facility, and food prep area, accessible restrooms and showers, visiting providers, case management, and connections with other resources. Currently, 72% of the individuals that live on site are engaged in some sort of case management. And we do have a site council that works very well with staff to just give feedback on any safety concerns or anything on how to move forward.
Great. Thank you all. Thanks, Gabe and Candace, so much. I know that we went over the slides that was added. Anything that we felt like we wanted to cover quickly, or should we jump into questions? Gabe and Candace specifically, anything you also want to add quick, or good? Okay, so some of you are having your questions answered by folks typing, if they're able to be. Some people are adding, including questions that have 6 or 7 questions in one, so we're probably going to have to email those back. But I do, just before we get started on the questions where I ask them directly, I want to emphasize that, as I mentioned in the background, that the mitigation site started as a managed tent sanctioned encampment. It wasn't this program that was brought together in order to place people in housing. Its origin was to help provide shelter and allow people a safe and dry place to be. And so as the mitigation site, and as we transition into Quinn Street Village, these supportive services that will allow folks to thrive and exit into housing are being better incorporated. So the program itself is evolving, and we're able to include better metrics and performance measures as the program grows, and more supportive funding is tied, and we learn more, and we develop a greater partnership with CCS. And so we've learned a lot, and its origin was, a bit kind of responsive. And now we're able to really evolve the program and allow it be more supportive for residents and the community and the neighborhood. And so I just want to highlight that piece as I'm seeing a lot of questions about performance measures and exits. It's that the origin of the site wasn't exits. The origin of the site was a healthy and safe place for people to be and stay out of the cold. So just want to preface that before we jump into questions. Lined up that we could ask?
Sure. Let me just go through some of the questions. We've gotten a lot of questions so far, trying to keep up best as we can. One person asked what security you'll be offering to make sure the school at St. Mike's stays safe and monitored. And I know Gabe talked a little bit about this already, but if there's anything additional we can add to that question. I know CCS has talked several times with St. Mike's, so I'm not sure if there's anything else that we can add at this point, Gabe, that you'd like to address here.
Yeah, I just think, we've talked to the leadership at the church multiple times, and some of the rules we put in place were in direct response to some of the primary concerns that the church and school had. And so we continued to, we expect to continue to check in with the church regularly in school and see how things are going. And that, some of the rules we put in place for the new site are related to making sure people know that they need to respect our neighborhood in addition to the site. And so if there's concerns, we have direct communication with the leadership at the church and the school so that we can continue that discussion and make sure that things are going well.
Great, thank you.
I have a question here, and it says, how will individuals with needs be able to get into a tiny house at the new site? If we could just talk about placement and how folks are placed into the mitigation site before and new, that would be great.
Yeah, so there's been a couple of iterations of how people get placed into the mitigation site. The mitigation site, when it was started, was primarily, there was that explosion of tent camping in downtown over a short period of time. And so the goal of the site was to give a safe, monitored place for those individuals to be. And so we don't take people from all over the place. It's people that are unsheltered in downtown Olympia mostly, because that was the intent of the site to begin with. So we work with coordinated entry to get people that meet those criteria and have them placed through coordinated entry when we have an opening. And sometimes City of Olympia staff can do direct placements as well.
This one says here, if a guest is asked to leave, where would they go?
Yeah, so if a guest is asked to leave, we always try to, it depends if they want to work with us or not, but we always try to work with them through case management to find them another place to go. Sometimes they want that support from us, and sometimes they wouldn't want that support from us. But we'd usually try to connect with one of the other service providers in town to make sure they have an option for them.
Will all residents be required to have a valid ID?
That will not be a requirement upon entry, as some of the individuals we're working with to get IDs once they move in.
Gabe, maybe you could talk a little bit about your case management model. And the question specifically is, why do you not require 100% participation in case management? And maybe you could talk a little bit about the FCS program and what you offer currently to residents at the site.
Sure. Yeah. Well, as Darian mentioned earlier, the initial goal of the site when CCS got involved in April 2020 was to just provide security and safety for individuals to have a safe place to shelter, as there weren't enough options. And especially during the pandemic, there have not been, an overload of housing options for people that are permanent. And so since we started there, when we started there, it was all about those goals, safety and sheltering. We've had a goal with the city to work towards improving that. And so we've been able to add some funding. We have a part-time case manager, and we also are utilizing foundational community supports to build Medicaid to provide case management services to people. And so we don't have currently enough case management on-site support to provide case management for every individual. And so that's why we partner with a lot of outside agencies that provide peer services and other case management and invite them to work with people. And we also have a goal, we're applying for other outside funding to try to increase our on-site case management service capabilities so that we can have that offered for everyone. But again, up until this point, the main goal has been safety and security sheltering services so that people have a safe, appropriate place to stay warm and shelter.
Thanks, Gabe. I have one here that says, do you need any healthcare volunteers to come to the site?
Oh yeah, thanks. Well, our agency has had some significant limits on volunteering at many of our programs during the last couple of years due to the pandemic. But as things are opening up more for us, we're definitely going to be looking for opportunities to partner with volunteers and in a variety of ways. So yeah, please reach out to us, and probably over the next few months, we'll be looking at ways to partner with volunteers.
There's a question about the neighborhood meetings. So those will be quarterly meetings that CCS will offer to surrounding businesses and neighbors. The question is, who in the neighborhood will you be meeting with? And I can partially answer that, or Gabe, if you want to answer that as well. I think we can start by reaching out to some of the neighbors. I believe CCS has already reached out, and city staff has also talked to some of the neighboring businesses and state agencies, as well as St. Mike's School and the church there. But those meetings will be welcome to other businesses who we haven't connected with as well. And Gabe, feel free to comment anything else if you have any other thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think that covers it. Yeah, definitely want that surrounding neighborhood. We definitely want to make those connections and have open communication and invite those people to the quarterly meeting.
Gabe, just a point of clarification, with the IDs not being required at the beginning of the site, people are curious how to run sex offender tests or reviews if you don't require IDs at the start.
Yeah, so we will be working with most times we're being referred individuals from other service providers through coordinated entry or through the city of Olympia. It could be the police department is asking us if we could shelter a specific individual who maybe is staying unsheltered in the downtown Olympia area. And so sometimes we have their information verified through those sources, and we wouldn't need an ID card yet. We might have a copy of an ID card that a service provider had back when they had their ID, and then they may have lost it by now, so we need to work on it. So we definitely will need to confirm who the individual is, but there's some different ways that we can do that sometimes if they don't have their hard copy ID on them right at the start.
So identification is required, but the tangible card per se isn't a requirement to get in, but supports to obtain a card would be there.
Yeah, because we've agreed with, really through talking to the neighborhood that we won't be serving sex offenders, that we're going to need to know who individuals are so that we can search through the registry.
How will the quarterly meetings be publicized? How do you typically do outreach and publicize for your quarterly meetings or engagement meetings?
Yeah, I think we'll be making a list of all the neighboring businesses, and then we'll probably just be reaching out to them individually at the start. And I envision it's probably going to be a Zoom or Microsoft Teams video conference type of meeting, so that it makes it accessible to everyone. And we'll try to get anyone's email that's interested and send that invite out.
Great.
There's a question about what kinds of mental health resources are connected to the site. Are mental health providers in communication with case managers?
Yeah, they work very closely and collaborate on efforts to help work with individuals. And so there's less barriers for people. So if an individual gets connected to services, for instance, and then that case manager will reach out for further services that may be external, such as like mental health or maybe substance misuse, then they collaborate together to help that individual on their path.
I have two questions. Are pets allowed and are children allowed in the site?
Pets are allowed, children are not.
Thank you.
There's, sorry, Darian, there's also, just to clarify, there's a 2 pet limit per participant.
Thank you. Are there mental health resources available to those who don't have case managers at the site? So do you all work with other service providers that aren't necessarily site specific for mental health resources?
Absolutely. I always welcome external or internal case managers or service providers to come on site. You know, there's been a few, I'm not going to mention specific names, who have just came in when I first became supervisor and just wanted to know, hey, I'm branching out. I don't have anybody on my caseload. Can I just come and meet individuals? Who soon got the roster pretty filled up with a lot of our participants on site just through doing participant outreach on site. I have service providers that come every Wednesday and just kind of have a talk with people to let them know who they are and what they do. And so it's a way to outreach and let people know, hey, we're here if you need the help.
I'm seeing a lot of questions about when the school is going to communicate this with the students, parents, and participants. We don't necessarily have a say on when that happens, and we haven't asked that not to happen. So we're unsure on when that will be communicated via the church, unless, Gabe, you have any information there. I've just seen a handful, and I wanted to cover that generally, unless you had something else.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add. We're certainly just trying to stay in communication with the church and school leadership to make sure they have any information, and they've given us some great feedback along the process that has helped shape some of our code of conduct that will be at the new site.
Thanks for all of your patience. There are some long questions and some duplicates, so we're trying to make sure those get covered. Krista, how you doing? You see any others?
Yeah, I was going to just add another question. It's a bit of a long question, but basically they're asking about how you group individuals on the site. If there's any plan or policy about if people are grouped according to vulnerability or safety concerns, or a mix of people just randomly assigned to a tiny home. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about how you place people and what steps you might take if somebody needed to be relocated, or how you make those kinds of decisions.
Yeah, well, jump in, Candace, because you're more directly involved with this than I am at any time. But part of it is limited to, so we reserve some of our units that have electrical outlets, and not all of them will have regular electrical outlets. And so we reserve those units for individuals who have medical equipment that they need to plug in. So that's one way that we reserve units. And then the other units, usually Candace does a really good job of trying to group people where they feel safe and comfortable. So sometimes there might be an individual who maybe in their past history didn't feel safe around another individual that stays at the site. She really works with them and gets to know each individual on an individual basis. And if they will let her know most often, hey, I don't feel safe around this individual. I have some history with them in the past. I just feel uncomfortable. And then she'll usually try to accommodate them. It just depends on our how many openings we have at the time and things like that. But yeah, Candace does a great job of working with individuals and knowing their specific needs, both medically and just preference and other.
I'm still seeing a couple more questions on asking to describe what will happen if residents go on to St. Michael's School property. Regulations around safety and behavior as it pertains to the school and surrounding businesses.
Yeah, so that's, we have, especially our site council, they're really hopeful. They've brought this up as we meet with them weekly, that they really are hoping to be great neighbors. They're talking about, hey, can we get vests so that we can go around the neighborhood and pick up garbage? And they're really concerned about being perceived as good neighbors there. That's the site council that we meet with weekly. So they're really eager to be good neighbors there. And as far as specific to this school, I think because we've established a really good communication with the principal and also the church leadership, I think that they can just reach out to us directly. And that's, again, they had sort of several primary concerns that they shared from that community there, and we've addressed those. And so if individuals were acting in behaviors that were unwanted, that could affect their ability to stay in our program. That'll be written into the rules, the code of conduct.
I've just to add to that, I've had quite a few, more than just the site council, asking if, hey, can we get a volunteer group and just pick up trash in the neighborhood? Because we would like to be seen as good neighbors, like Gabe said.
That's really great. I have another question here. Just to clarify, are drugs and alcohol permitted within the site? How is the city and CCS going to mitigate any congregating or additional people who are homeless around the site? It speaks a little bit to guests, but are drugs and alcohol allowed? And then what happens if potential encampments or congregations are around the site?
Yeah, drugs and alcohol are not allowed. We do serve individuals who have drug and alcohol histories, and so we're often working with them to try to get them into services for that sort of thing. As far as what was the second part of it, Darian?
Congregation around the site?
Oh, yes. Yeah. So that's, we've tried to put in rules. So no guests are allowed, first of all. That helps reduce the need for people to come there. No parking is allowed other than no parking is allowed for participants or guests. Really only like official people doing business there, or their service providers or staff are going to be allowed to park on the site. And so those are a couple things we've done to reduce the need for people to be around that site. And then, if there's problems, we would just be working as we do. We work really closely with Olympia Police Department to notify them of any concerns we have. But our goal as CCS is really to serve the people that are there, that are our registered participants. We're not interested in having other people around the site.
There's a few questions I've noticed in the chat about any sort of rules for pets on the site, if they have a restroom area, or how waste is handled, if they're required to be spayed or neutered, or if you have any breed restrictions.
We do have stipulations on like individuals cleaning up after their animals, and then there is all animals are like to be leashed as well. All dogs are to be leashed, and so it's something that all the residents are very mindful of. And I'm sorry, was there anything else?
Now, we don't have a breed restriction. It's more based on behavior. So if
Which is we also work with OPD if there's like concerns about that as well.
I'm still seeing a couple of questions about sex offenders that I clicked that they were answered, but it looks like they were not. So can you just kind of sum up in a nice package again? Sex offender policy, you will run how you determine if someone is a sex offender. And then if they are and they're unable to reside at your site, what comes next? Just a nice clean package. I think that would be helpful for folks.
Sure. Yeah. So this was one of the, my impression was this was the biggest concern from the church and school. And so we heard that concern and took that very seriously. So we've altered our procedures for the new site. And so what we'll be doing is we'll be looking on the registry through all of our current individuals staying at the site. We've already actually done that, so that if there were any individuals, we could contact them directly, let them know they would not be able to move with the site and that they would need to find alternative options for housing or shelter. So wanted to give any individuals, if there were any, that lead time. So no individuals that we are able to find on the registry will move. And then as part of the intake process moving forward, anyone that's referred for placement to us, part of the screening would be looking them up in a sex offender registry. If their name is on the registry, we would ask them to leave. And if they, or we would not, admit them. And in the future, if somebody stayed at the site and they, at some point, something happened to where they needed to register as a sex offender, then we would not be allowed to shelter them, and we would refer them on somewhere else. And so I think that's kind of what we're doing moving forward. Hopefully that explained it. And that, again, was largely in part of the response we got from the school and church trying to address their concerns.
Do you have a specific partner do you have, I think, partnership with where they'd be referred, or any sort of additional information there?
Yeah, it's really challenging for people with those offenses. We had looked into some options on if we could house level 1 sex offenders, those that are the lowest risk to offend and have sometimes smaller concerns, but we really were trying to be responsive to the neighborhood there. So we're not even allowing those individuals at this time. And so there's not a slam dunk. If you have a sex offense, it's very hard to be sheltered or housed. And so we work with a variety of sources for that. We don't have a one-stop referral, but we usually work individually on their particular cases, also what level of sex offense they have, which also impacts where they can stay. And we're usually just doing case-by-case referrals and support.
Thanks, Gabe. Are there any sort of curfews? Are people that reside at the site able to come and go as they please, or curfews?
There's no curfew, but there is quiet hours on the site.
Great. What are those?
Those are 10 p.m. to 8 a.m.
Thank you. What happens if a resident is found using drugs?
Yeah, that it starts off with a conversation with them. So usually we would connect with them through our case management services and talk with them. Our hope is that this might be an opportunity for them to get into services to change that behavior. So that's where we start.
Mm. And meals are brought to the site. How often, from where? And yeah, can you talk about meal service?
Meals are brought to the site from the CCS kitchen Monday through Friday during lunchtime. And then we also have a collaboration with the food bank to come help serve people when we will be a little bit further away.
Thanks.
I wonder if Patrick or Randy might be able to help with this question. They've worked a lot on the site setup at the new location. Do you have an estimate of the cost per unit to set up? They also has to maintain, and that seems a little bit trickier to answer, but would one of you maybe be able to give an estimate for the costs per tiny home unit?
Probably this is Randy Wesselman with Public Works Engineering. Probably the best estimate I could give you is for the existing or the new, it's about 17 units that we will be adding to the site. Probably about $2,500 to $2,600 per unit. That does not include labor. That is just the lumber package for each of the individual buildings.
And all of the new units will be equipped with a heating element, some kind of a heater, and electricity with a USB outlet as well in those new.
And a light. There'll be a light in each of the units as well.
Yes.
The reason why we just have a material cost associated or an estimate for that right now is that we are working with another organization, a local nonprofit, they're volunteering to build those tiny houses for this site.
This asks, will the site be visible to people getting off the I-5 at Plum Street?
I think it's going to be pretty hard to see through it, even maybe a little bit when it's not leafed out or all the vegetation is leafed out, but it's going to be pretty well hidden from I-5 coming off on Henderson or Plum there.
Yeah, I would say I actually take that exit to come into the city every single day that I come in, and it's pretty challenging to see the site until you're about past it, basically.
To be gardens and flower beds that are donated by a local business. And so it's going to be really beautified. And so, that's another evolution coming from downtown to Quince Street. Mm-hmm. And it's going to look, it's very intentional to match the footprint of the site and to allow, again, some breathing room for people and just like a great flow. And I think that with the mural and flowers, it'll allow it to be a little bit more homey and fit nicer. So. What is your control for weapons? Do you check folks' spaces, or how do you control for guns and knives, etc.?
We do unit inspections.
Do you have like a protocol? Is that just random? How often? Can you talk just like about your process?
Yeah, early on when we first got to the site, we talked a lot to Olympia Police Department to discuss what we should consider as a weapon and what we shouldn't. And so from those conversations, we learned a lot. And so we put it's one of our rules. You're not allowed to have weapons on site. And so if we see a weapon or we saw someone using an object in a way that would be used like a weapon, even if it's traditional weapon or not, then we would, it depends on how they're doing it. Then we might be contacting law enforcement if they're not using it as a weapon, but it is a weapon. Then we remind them of the rules and work with them on a plan to get that weapon removed.
Will residents be asked to get involved in cleanup, gardening, etc.? I know you talked a bit that your site council was excited about that. What would that look like moving forward?
Our residents are actually very excited for some sort. Are we going to have a garden? What about some flowers? I was like very impressed, actually. I didn't know that so many of them were interested in having a green thumb or already had one. So they are very excited.
This question says, what are the expectations for the site after 3 years? Housing, great need in our community. Really hoping for it to become housing, permanent housing. Yes, to help house and add to our housing market. Housing.
There's a question about high heat. So we've had some periods of extremely high heat lately in the summer. So maybe you could talk a little bit more about some of what you've done to mitigate the heat impacts, and just I can share also from the city's perspective. We've partnered with the county and with other partners, Interfaith Works and other service providers, to open cooling centers downtown, and so we've helped advertise that and make sure that residents know about that opportunity or have transportation if they need it. And maybe Gabe and Candace, you could share a little bit about some of the creative solutions that you've come up with to try to help with the heat.
So we had a misting system, and then we definitely figured out just how to kind of have do it yourself, like ice packs and so forth for others. But a lot of the individuals living within the mitigation site like really came together as a community. I had one participant in particular that bought the biggest cooler I'd ever seen and just filled it up with ice and water for a couple weeks when it was just extreme heat. And like Krista said, it was just making sure that individuals know of like connection to the resources that are available. You know, we would definitely make sure that individuals who maybe are elderly would know, like, hey, this is what time the cooling center is open, and you know, you're more than welcome to come over there. But also doing those safety checks, like, are you okay? You know, do you need help getting to some water? Do you need me to bring you some water, and so forth? But people really came together as a community to watch out for one another and make sure that we're all staying safe in such high heats.
Yeah, and another possible benefit with having the USB is they make things now that like miniature fans and things like that we might be able to have in the units, which we didn't have at the other site. So that will be an added benefit of the electricity.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the battery powered ones that have little fans right here that I didn't know existed. So those were pretty cool to see.
It's saying here that I have a few about which neighborhood groups will be identified in order to, like, which neighborhood this falls under for a neighborhood group. East Side. Is that, has anyone been in contact with a neighborhood group? And if so, has it been the East Side neighborhood group? Indian Creek Neighborhood Association or East Side Neighborhood Group?
I can just talk about the city's notification process for all of these meetings. There have been 3 community meetings about the site relocation. And before each of these meetings, mailing went out to businesses and residents within a certain perimeter around the proposed location of the site. And so everyone who was within that perimeter received a mailed notification. as well as we've sent it out to several email addresses of folks who've participated or who've asked questions, who've engaged with the city, or who attended a prior community meeting.
Thanks, Krista. What type of furnishings are provided in the units?
Yeah, we have several different kinds of units, so it depends. Some of them come with built-in bed frames. Some of them we have received some grants to purchase beds, mattresses, and frames. So it kind of depends on the particular unit. But at the new site, all of them will have a bed and mattress. We are planning to provide each person with stackable totes to store things in. What else, Candace, am I missing? They'll have, well, we talked about the USB plugins at the new site, electricity, lights, heaters.
Yeah, and then the medical units already come like equipped with like a desk and stuff like that, as along with the built-in bed frame like Gabe's talking about. And then we purchase mattresses through a very generous donation.
Okay. The quarterly meetings that you plan to have, those will be open to the public, correct? Or will those be neighborhood specific meetings or anyone from the public can attend?
I think the plan is the neighborhood will be invited to those, but I'm not sure if that will change or not. That was my recollection. It would be sort of a neighborhood meeting.
Okay. This question says, can stakeholder faith communities participate in feedback and evaluation of site effectiveness? Do you know, outside of St. Michael's, if any other faith communities have been involved in this, or if that is the plan?
Well, we certainly have at the community kitchen, which is not far from Quince Street. We're in the Salvation Army building, but that's a CCS run program. That we have a lot of partnerships with faith communities. And so certainly with volunteers and things like that, we have a history of partnering with local faith communities. So I don't know, usually it starts through there, and then sometimes we have further discussions from there.
Can you just talk a bit about your experience with Tiny Home Village operation? It doesn't have to be necessarily CCS in, Thurston County, but your organization as a large, and just your expansiveness and knowledge around shelter operations, tiny home village management, just kind of showing that you all have experience, but your larger organization does this outside of Thurston County too, if you could speak to that a bit.
Sure. Catholic Community Services celebrated 100 years in existence in 2018. It's the largest private nonprofit social service agency in Western Washington, as far as I know, unless that's changed recently. And they do a lot of different services. So everything from permanent supportive housing to sheltering. I've been involved with that for 15 years in Olympia. And then we have other programs like meal programs. We have a similar sort of micro home site in Tacoma called the Stability Site. And so, and the services that we provide, there's many of them, many different types. There's in Olympia, even we have multiple different, everything from family behavioral health to a program called Arrest and Jail Alternatives that works really closely with police departments and things like that. And the Stability Site and other shelters, we get to draw on that institutional knowledge when we have questions about best practices and things like that. So the Stability Site is the closest regional program that we have that's similar to the Quinn Street Village program. And so we've been able to borrow a lot of lessons learned from that program that's been in existence, because they also have small micro homes on that site as well. So we have a lot of, that's a benefit, is we have a lot of other programs we can draw from and learn from them.
Thanks, Gabe. Do you all have an email address that you allow inquiries to, or an email address that I could provide? I don't know if it's Gabe your personal one, or if you have like a email address.
Yeah, we should maybe set up a new Quinn Street Village at ccsww.org kind of email. We haven't set one up for that site yet, but we have some of those types for others. So
Great.
I don't have one I could give out right now, but
Let's do that.
We can set that up.
I can call IT and get that done tomorrow.
Thanks, Candace.
Yeah.
Appreciate it. Okay. So Krista, we're seeing just another question about how folks are selected to be in Quinn Street. And again, that is in our contract. That is through a coordinated entry or placed via the city. City staff has relationships with folks downtown, or if there's another situation where city staff has been in contact with someone and it works out that a placement can be made, or CCF goes through coordinated entry, just like the rest of our housing and social service providers. So yeah, through those two ways. How we doing, Krista?
I'm just checking in. There's several folks who are neighboring businesses or churches who would like to be part of that neighborhood meeting. So I'll make some notes of some of the organizations that would like to participate. And if you're able to give a contact, I can save that. So we have that on hand for Gabe and Candace as we move forward.
Darian, would you like us to maybe just give a real quick update what they're going to see happening at the site in the next couple of weeks here?
That would be awesome. Thanks, Randy.
Okay. Patrick, you can fill in where I leave out. But as Darian indicated in her opening statement, we pretty much completed the site prep work is complete. That included sewer, water, as well as conduit for electricity. Right now, Bedford Electric is one of our electrical contractors. We're again installing the underground wiring and the electrical service panels, which is in coordination with PSC, so we can get electricity to the site. That should be happening again in the next 2 weeks. Actually, this week, Thursday and Friday, what you're going to see is the Connex containers. There's 3 living units and 2 hygiene units that will be moved from the existing site to the new site and set up. Rogland's Contractors is doing that work for us. There'll be a large crane that'll be both down at the existing mitigation site and then be used to place the containers at the new site. Then we expect, and we just confirmed this today, that our contractor who will be rehabbing the tiny homes will start moving those the week of June 21st. So we'll be moving approximately 10 groups of 10 tiny homes at a time to the new site. They'll do some rehab work on the units when they get moved there and then set up. After they're set up, then we'll be doing the electrical work to include the heaters, the light, and the light switch is included in that with the USB connection in it. We expect the move probably to take 6 to 8 weeks. If they think they can do about, take them 3 to 5 days to basically rehab 10 units at a time. So that could be go in probably to the mid-August, end of September to do the complete move. In the month of July, we're, again, as was mentioned earlier, we're working with Faith Alliance to actually build 2 structures on the site, which includes a new office, a 16 by 16. It's not a large office. It's just a bigger building than what Candace has right now to be able to work in down there. And it will also be doing a 16 by 16 laundry building, which will include washers and dryers for the site. During that same time period too, we're also working with Faith Alliance to build 17 more tiny homes that will be added to the site. So we're working with them to work through the details of getting those 17 more units constructed. Patrick, anything you want to add to what I said?
I think the only thing else that I would add, well, there was a couple of questions about security cameras. That is something that's going to be installed at the site. The site's going to have a ton of lighting put in as well to facilitate security and safety. And then, yeah, we're working with some local businesses to get some donations around getting some big planters, potentially a couple of park benches, and any other kind of, beautification efforts that they want to contribute to for the site. And then, again, there were some other questions, again, about safety and response and emergency response. The site was really, we took a lot of input from fire and police as we were looking at the design of this site to facilitate better response to the site. So there's these large open lanes in the site that are going to facilitate both sight lines for safety and security, as well as emergency response. And I've done several visits down to the current site, and that is just simply not the case there. So that's a huge improvement that we're making with this move to the new location.
And the site is fully fenced now. At least the perimeter fencing is complete. And so, but there will also be some interior fencing, as we're calling it, that will also be added once everything is placed on the site.
Thanks for that, Randy and Patrick. That's great. And I just want to end with, there has been a lot of input and work into this move with the goal of prioritizing the lives and safety and health of the residents and the neighborhood community to ensure that people are safe and healthy and are able to really connect with services and to be a great resident and to be able to be their best selves. And I have full faith in CCS that they're just really great operators and are going to be a great partner to the surrounding businesses in the school. And allowing us to beautify it and be really intentional with the new site. I have a lot of hope moving forward with the next steps. So thank you all so much for your time. Thank you, attendees, with all your questions. Yes, we'll be getting back to folks with unanswered questions. And we have a mitigation site, newly Quince Street Village site website on the city's page that has an FAQ, contact information, etc. So be sure to check that out. Any last minute additions from my team? Okay. Thanks a million. Have a great evening, everyone. See ya.
Hope you liked this video. Thanks for watching.